So John, always pleasure to see you. I think you recognize everyone except on the top side of the screen. That is Rachna, my co-author.
Good morning. Nice to meet you. Pleasure to meet you.
My honor. My honor. How do we make this the best interview you guys do for your book? What are the 2 or 3 things you want to accomplish? And then we'll jump right in.
Yes. So I know how prepared you are, John. So I'm not going to waste too much time in explaining the book to you. However, I'm happy to answer 1 or 2 questions you might have. That is one. Then we'll jump into questions directly. And I know McKinsey and I have talked about it. So hopefully we can cover all. So your question, how do we make it the best? Can we cover the 9 questions I have? That will be the challenge. If we can't, that's okay. Last 1 or 2 we can leave. And 3, be candid, John. You are always candid, and that's why I admire you, and that is why you are here.
How is your son?
My sons are doing well, John. My elder son is now from Seattle. He has moved to Singapore just before COVID. And my younger one is after graduating from your school, actually. He is now working in San Francisco for impact investment in a company called Social Finance. He graduated from Duke.
Great. Well, he graduated at the right time. Our football team this year is very weak. Our basketball team is very weak. First time in several decades, Coach K hasn't had a real contender powerhouse, and always interesting how you stay on top. All right, I've got it. We'll hit all the questions. It will be fun. And if you want to ask a question twice a different way, that will not bother me at all. Don't feel you have to stick exactly to what you said. Do it more how the flow comes out, and we'll have fun.
Sounds good, John. If I have to describe the book in just 1 line, John, just so that you set the context for you, it is to define the person you would be proud of and then become one. Define the person you would be proud of and then become one. The story of the book is all about that. First, it helps with definition of what the person you want to be, and then it helps you with all the processes, techniques, and skills to help you get there. That's
okay. Got it.
Now, why you are here, as I said, I have only selected about 6-7 people who I personally admire, and I want them to be part of my journey, and you are one of them. And you don't need to know why. I admire you a lot.
Well, thank you very much. If it's all right, I will sip a Diet Coke as we go through the morning.
No, you please go. So Diet Coke hasn't left you after Cisco.
It is not. It's my favorite drink of choice, and I'm still working on Coca-Cola to give me discounts.
Okay, so here we go, John. You have achieved phenomenal success, John. What are the 3 top factors you would dedicate it to?
Well, I think it starts with my parents. Both of them were doctors in West Virginia. Mom was psychology and internal medicine. Dad was OBGYN, delivered about 6,000 babies, 25% of them for free. Wow. And they had a tremendous influence on my life. My dad taught me how to think 5, 10, 15 years out, and that's unusual for a doctor in the business planning. And my mom taught me the emotional connections, and they led by example. The second thing is both of them taught me from the beginning that education was the equalizer in life. And so it wasn't a discussion about would we go to school, myself, my sisters, it's how many years. And I went for 9.5 years and 3 different schools and a bunch of degrees on it. And then the third thing is probably getting market transitions right. And that's difficult for people to grasp, but really, coming out of a wonderful state that was the coal capital of the world, that was the chemical capital of the world, and then watching them not transition to the next level, seeing that at Boston 128 with the mini computer industry with Wang and DEC and Data Journal that disappeared because they didn't change. And then watching Silicon Valley rotate through it with mixed results. The first couple of decades very well. Now it's not a given that they will lead. We will lead in the future. So if I try to take a crack at 3 of those, I'd say those would be the 3 that come to mind.
Thank you, John. We'll keep moving. If we have time at the end, we may come back, but I'll keep moving. Okay. Were you goal-driven, John, from your youth? If not, when did you set up goals for yourself and went on achieving them?
You know, when you said that might be a question you asked, and this might sound unusual, it's the first time I've been asked that question. And it's rare that we do not, we hear new questions on it. We maintain a list, McKinsey and Shannon, of about 70 of our most frequently asked questions. And I actually like this one a lot because it made me think. My initial answer is I didn't think so. And then the more I thought about it, the answer is absolutely. Whether it's swimming laps in the pool, competing competitively on that, or swimming in the river, Elk River, whether it's how many fish could you catch when you go out, how many foul shots could you make as a 7-year-old, as an 8-year-old, what percentage would you hit on that, how you build teams. And I've always liked building teams, whether it's intramural teams or business teams, to compete and to have fun competing. And the goal wasn't the end objective. The end objective was to have a good time and to share things. I do team sports almost entirely on it. But thinking about it, absolutely yes. I was goal driven in most everything I did, even though I'd never thought of it that way. But when I look back on it, absolutely. What time did I do the laps in swimming? How quickly did I run the mile, et cetera, on it? So very much goal driven.
Wonderful, wonderful answer, John. You have already covered part of third, but I'll give you a chance in case you want to add something.
Okay.
To be equally successful in life, and I know how balanced goal person you are. You have always looked at company or individual life in a very balanced way. But to be equally successful in life, in addition to professional goals, what other important goals you set and went on to achieve them?
Well, we set some pretty ambitious ones, but I think originally, when I was growing up and early levels of management, it could be as simple as giving back to society on helping to build houses, or basically food community banks, helping give out food to those that are less fortunate. The goals in terms of family, and we've been very, very fortunate and very unusual that out of our family for 4 generations, and I think I'd have to do the math, but I think there are about 18 married couples in that we've never had a divorce. And that is luck, because I'm a huge believer if things don't work out, you need to step up to it. But I think you see a family that is committed to not being perfect, because no one is, but committed to having goals beyond just the business side of the house, family side of the house, kids, et cetera, on it. And so I'm a believer in that. I think while your son went to Duke and I went to Duke, and very proud of the school, I'm most proud of all the business schools and engineering schools at Stanford. And the reason is they struck a balance between just being an unbelievable high academic school, but also they had tremendous top intramural sports teams in the nation. And in that, they were number one. Ted Leland, under John Hennessy's time period, Ted was the athletic director. They built a dynasty in every sports, men and women's, across the board, from soccer to tennis to golf to football to basketball, et cetera. And I actually think that blended version of a well-rounded student athlete is a good model for the future. And so I'm a believer in the combination of the two. I play hard and I work hard, and I think that's kind of infectious.
Terrific, John. You are a very passionate leader, John, and that inspires people who work for you. I saw that in Cisco. You could inspire thousands, if not more. From your side, what role passion has played for you?
Well, again, you're making me really think on a couple of questions I hadn't approached from this way before. I'm passionate at whatever I do, and I hadn't really thought of it. So the answer is in almost everything I do. Even when I fail, I'm passionate about or under stress about it, such as being dyslexic, et cetera, on it. And passion, I think, makes things go, and you got to keep it in check. But I love to motivate people, including myself, to achieve goals perhaps they thought were impossible, and then not by thinking we're smarter, but just saying, how do we break it into manageable segments, moves on a chessboard, if you will, to achieve the end result. So passion is a huge part of what I do. I celebrate the successes. I train my 20 CEOs that are in my startup JC2 Venture Group about passion and culture and communication skills, as well as strategy and vision and building leadership. So it is an integral part of what I do. And it's also, I think, very much a motivator. During our time at Cisco, I think our attrition for 20 years averaged 5% voluntary.
That's
In
right.
an industry that averaged 15 to 20. And you saw that, and you were with several great companies, but at your time at Cisco, I think you saw a very low turnover rate, and everybody could have gone for more money somewhere else. But it's that culture and passion, and it's both probably equally as important that made us a family. Not a perfect family. I'm not a perfect leader, but made us a family.
Very, very nice answer. And you are as good as it gets, John. I have worked with many leaders. I've told you that before.
Thank you
Moving
very
on
much.
to
Far
next
from
question.
perfect, though. I made my share of mistakes.
We all do. We are humans. So excellence is about becoming the best version of yourself. Um, Anything you would like to say there? You have learned, you have taught
Yeah.
yourself, you have learned the skills and the technology and so many things to become the best version of John. And John's bar is very high as far as I know. So what do you have to say about that?
I never approached it from the point of view of best version of myself, but I tried to, if I did something, do it right and to the fullest of my capability. And I think that's saying the same thing. So approaching from that perspective, whatever I do, I try to be my best version. Whether it's today running 3 miles through the hills up behind my house, I set my best version of the times, goal oriented to your point, and the time per lap on it. I try to give back and pay it forward, if you will, regularly and change the world. And I set very ambitious goals with the internet of changing the way people work, live, learn, and play. And I think most people thought that was crazy for a router company. And then they realized it was going to happen. With my startups, I'm trying to get a startup world and job creation, whether it's in every state in the US or in France or in India, in ways that hasn't been done before. So setting the best version of all of us. And I'm more of a team player rather than an individual, setting the goals for us as a team that might stretch our capabilities, but also stretch our imagination and our curiosity.
Wonderful, wonderful, John. You are big fan of leadership, and you
Yes.
walk the talk. You lead it by example. Anything you would like to say to our youth, because the book is focusing on youth, on why leadership skills are important, how they can go on and developing it from the early youth stage.
Well, I think all of us need mentors, or people we learn from, and you can learn from your own mistakes or you can learn from others. And the second is much less painful. Uh,
Yes.
and I think there were many people that influenced me, starting with my parents. And I was very fortunate to have two amazing parents. Mom broke the gender barriers in many ways. And remember, if she were alive today, she'd be 96 years old. And so to be a doctor, a athlete, a ballroom dancer, a lifeguard, ping pong champion, valedictorian of every class she went to, she was fearless in learning about it, but also something that obviously was very hard for a female at that point in time. Uh, and having role models like Shimon Peres out of Israel that really fostered the Israeli defense approach that allowed them, and with a country of only 7 million people, with a very hostile neighborhood would be an understatement of hundreds of millions of people, to survive, but then to transition over to a startup nation and job creation and startup peace and mentality on it. And so I think you learn from everyone. I will learn from a fishing guide on not only how do you present the fly to catch a trout. I will learn from the person who's a doorman or doorwoman at the hotel about what's important to them and chat about what they think about politics and life and direction. So I'm constantly crowdsourcing and I enjoy it. If my wife isn't there to kick me in the shins, I ask almost any question imaginable for it, and I apologize in advance, and I don't mind that back as well. So I think for all young people, and we hope Shimon Peres, that late president of Israel that I talked about, he taught me to always think like a teenager. And that's really what the question is you're asking, which is think and dream. Imagine what success looks like, whether it's as simple as how fast you run the mile, or success in a sporting event, or success academically. And then say, how do you play it out in your mind, and picture the outcome, what it really looks like that you go for.
Very nice. And John, I know how significant you think role of mentors is. I saw that we have talked about it many times. Any of your mentors in your youth or early career, how you selected them, who were your mentors, what one or two things you learned from them that you would not have learned the other way otherwise?
Well, one that might surprise your readers is that a teacher by the name of Mrs. Anderson. I mentioned earlier that I was dyslexic, and that was before people really understanding what dyslexia was. It causes you to invert. You read almost backwards, invert the characters when you see things, and very hard in reading. But at that time, it was just called a learning disability. And in the second and third grade, my teachers were pretty concerned that I may not even graduate from high school, because I had real trouble reading and very slow on it. My parents were wonderful. They'd read with me each night, but all they were was getting me to make the same mistakes without realizing it. They found a teacher who dealt with spatial learning capabilities by the name of Mrs. Anderson, and she taught me how to overcome my weaknesses, how to adjust at first just to be able to read reasonably well, and then how to take it to the next level and seeing the picture and the total outcome. Without her, I definitely would not have been able to get advanced degrees in business and law. Without her, I would have really struggled. So clearly a role model who changed my life. But I had many role models, both growing up, being out of West Virginia, a basketball player that I used to listen to on the radio, Jerry West, was an amazing role model. Leaders, both Republicans and Democrats. I'm a George Bush fan. I'm also a Bill Clinton fan. To me, I think you learn from everybody. And my parents worked hard for me always to see both sides of an issue and listen to both sides before you take a position and learn from them.
Terrific, John. One more question on leadership, because it is such an important topic. 3 leadership skills for an entrepreneur or a youth.
I'm going to separate it maybe into 2 questions. What are my expectations out of the leaders that I bet on in my startups?
Fair enough.
And the first expectation that I bet on is a ability to see what changes are occurring and outline a strategy to capitalize on those changes. The second is to build great teams. The third for the CEO is about communication skills, much more important now than it was 30 or 40 years ago. And then the last is culture, which most of them miss. Now, and what do I look for in leaders beyond those 4 foundation building blocks? I look for leaders who consistently overachieve. I look for leaders who build great teams. And when I talk to them, it isn't about 1 or 2. How do you build a great team? I look for leaders who really understand the sport or the industry that they're after. We talked about your son at Duke. Well, Coach K is in my opinion, the best basketball coach ever for both college athletes and pros, and has won more games and amazing. But he teaches them almost the philosophy of the sport and how do you really drive it through and see what's possible and play to your potential and set goals that are stretch goals with great cultures on it. Then I see if they walk the talk of the culture that I want at a company. And you've got to walk the talk. You can say the right words, but do you really practice those, and do you lead by example on it? And then I like to see leaders, how they handle crisis. You learn more about yourself, not during the good times, but during the crisis time. And so I'll often, it's not fair necessarily, but that's okay, put my leaders under pressure deliberately for a short time period to watch how they handle it and to teach them.
Excellent answer, John. Culture. You are a big proponent of culture in the company. You
Huge.
told me last time when we met, the CEO's most important job is to create the right culture in the company. I saw it firsthand in Cisco. For startups, when the founders are struggling with so many things already, what's your advice on culture?
Well, I think it goes back to those four elements that the founders have to do: strategy and vision for the company, build, develop, recruit, and change that leadership team to implement the vision and strategy, communication skills, whether it's to your employees, to the customers, to your investors, and then culture. It's one that is usually underestimated how important it is. I think you never have a great company without a very strong culture. You may like the culture at a Microsoft or a Cisco or a Facebook, you may not, but they always have strong cultures in terms of what they do. So teaching how important it is, and people say, well, we just understand what it is. That doesn't work, especially you start to grow. You've got to not only walk the talk, you've got to really put it down and reinforce if you really believe it, customer first. Are you a family approach to the business or not? Either way works. Just want to be consistent in what you say and what you do. Just do the right thing. It sounds basic, but it's amazing when you follow your cultural guidelines, how almost every decision you make becomes remarkably easier.
That's right. That's right. Excellent answers, John, on leadership and mentorship. I know how big supporter you are for having mentors. Shifting gears a little bit on the family and relationship side, family values side. So relationships and family values are important. I know it's very important to you personally as well. Please share an example of a story where your decision in the interest of family or upholding the values that you care about costed you in maybe professional aspects of your life. It's very important for our youth to know that sometimes you will have to make difficult decisions, which may even have some cost. Anything comes to your mind?
Well, it goes back to, and again, I'm not a perfect leader. I've made mistakes and I intend to make more. But you learn from your mistakes and you move forward. Sometimes there were 2 times I'd unfortunately bet my job at Cisco. I mean, I've never talked about it very much, but 2 times where I felt what the board of directors was wanting me to do was not right for the company. And 1 time it was actually, in my opinion, not right ethically. And I told my wife before meetings on both issues that were a decade apart that I may not have the job, but at the end of the day, I did keep my job. It wasn't a given. And by the way, it was a flip of the coin in some ways, but you have to be willing to back up your values with your actions. And it's always painful. And lots of times it would be so much easier to shortcut something or to sell customers something they really didn't need so you could make your quota or make extra money. The reason that I can go to almost any customer today I've ever had is, to the best of my ability, when I made commitments that I felt were in their best interest, and I would do my best to deliver on it behind it. Your currency as a leader is very simple. It is your track record, it's your relationships, and it's trust. And so you've got to protect that trust. And there'll be times when it won't be as easy. And learning how do you deal with that and just do what's right. It sounds simple. It is hard, especially when it's something that you wish you could do the other.
It is wonderful example, John, because I think this is very good example for people to know that at some point they may have to stand for their values, even if the stake is even their job. So wonderful example. Thank you so much. We are doing very well. We have 4 minutes, John. Just open message to our youth worldwide who are 20, 30 years old. What would you tell them? What the world looks like to you? What opportunity they have? What should they do and not do to take advantage of the world ahead of them?
Well, I think be your own person. All of us are different, and you don't want to copy what somebody else does, because you'll be in areas that you may not believe as strongly or you may not be as comfortable in. So be comfortable with who you are. Have the courage to dream. Most people don't dream enough. We forget what it was like when we were a young kid saying, I might be a future college basketball player, and imagine what it'd be like to sink the foul shot to win the game or something like that. Want to keep that as we get older. we tend to, without realizing, as we become, quote, part of the establishment, we perhaps tend to operate within a tighter, restricted area of our imagination or curiosity. I would say use your imagination, your curiosity, set goals, be realistic on them, and say, what do you have to accomplish there? But I think if there's one thing that's most important is don't compromise your values, and just to your best of your ability, try to do the right thing in life. That will make a difference all your life, and it will help you in ways that may surprise you or you hadn't even dreamed of having a benefit in.
John, family values. When your children were growing up, how you and your wife made sure that the children learn those values that you care about?
Well, part of it is we talked about it through generations. We were fortunate to have their grandparents around, and even for a short time, their great grandparents. We talked about how do you develop values and how did you learn from them? And we didn't say these are your values, we teaching lessons. And we are also taught, even though it might be painful, just do the right thing on very basic issues and direction, and treat others like you'd like to be treated yourself. I think those you have a chance to reinforce constantly in life. And I think it's so important that you do that as much as possible with your kids. And remember, your kids can be a much wider community of their peers, or in my case, all my startups. I mean, it is my extended family, and they aren't my kids, but they are the next generation and the generation after that of future leaders. And I love helping them determine their values in life and their trade-offs, and letting some of them learn on their own and make mistakes, and sometimes perhaps helping them dive in and make the catch and prevent them from doing something that might have resulted in a real problem. So I think it's a combination of learning that and teaching it to others.
Wonderful, John. I cannot thank you enough. We are right on time. While you are there, I do want to thank McKinsey and Shannon for making this happen, and for you to take this time out, which I truly, truly value. Thank you so much. You will be the first one to get my book, and I'm sure you will enjoy that. Very holistic, very wonderful interview. Thank you so much, John.
Vivek, thank you very much. And thank you, Vaishna. It was a pleasure. I hope you all have fun writing the book.
Thank you so much, John.
Thanks a lot.